Hi, my name is Kelly and this is my very first thrift flip. I'll show you how I made this top from 2 shirts that I purchased from Salvos stores. Let's get started. I've been really inspired by some other makers on YouTube and I wanted to have a go at creating my own thrift flips or upcycles. And so I thought I would start with a top. And this top is inspired by the Darling Ranges pattern that I had been sewing last month. If you want to see more on that, you can check out my January video with this first thrift flip. I've taken 2 existing shirts that I thrifted from Salvos. One was a men's business shirt and the other was a women's blouse. And I've taken the 2 because I really like the fabric and I thought that the colors went together really well. I also love the sleeves on the women's top. And I have recreated or reimagined both of those tops and created my own version. Now I'll show you some of the inspiration and then I will share my making process. I've seen a lot of patterns recently that have a puff sleeve and a tie front with a peplum or ruffle along the bottom of the blouse. And I've been really inspired to try and use a pattern from my stash rather than buying a new pattern to see if I can achieve the same result. So my 2 inspirational patterns here are the Ruffle Brunch set by Matchy Matchy Sewing Club and also the Fleur Dress and Blouse by Fabric Godmother. I created the ties by cutting 6 strips of fabric in rectangles and folding them in half and then in half again and sewing them together. I then start sewing the bias facing, which is used for the neckline. For the ruffle peplum, I've had to piece together smaller pieces of fabric, given that I had a limited amount, and I stitched it all together to create one very long rectangle. Sewing the bust darts is the next step. There's 2 bust darts and the front bodice piece. I also kept the original pocket from the women's blouse. I unpicked it from the original blouse and have restitched it in place on my front bodice. So yesterday I made a lot of progress on this thrift flip. And what I started with was redrafting my pattern pieces. I used the front and back bodice of the Darling Ranges pattern by Megan Nelson. And I used the dress view, but I lengthened the bodice pieces by about 7.5 centimeters because I knew I wanted the waist to be more of a drop waist than what the pattern is originally drafted for. I redrafted my pattern pieces. I then deconstructed the 2 shirts and cut out all of my pattern pieces. So I'll show you how far I got. I've got my bias facing ready to go and ironed in half. This is going to be the ruffle. So it's all sewn together and pieced together. Then I have my 6 little ties, which I'm going to use to fasten the front of the shirt instead of buttons. For my bodice, I have this pinned together at the moment, but I have sewn the bust darts. So you can see it's one of the bust darts, just showing the inside, and I did keep one of the pockets from one of the shirts, and I've popped that on the front of this as well. And then sleeve wise, I'm using the sleeves from one of the tops, so I just deconstructed the top and cut them out as close to the seam as I could. So they'll be going straight back on this top as is. So I do plan to get it finished off today. I've just got to sew the bodice. I've got to sew the bodice together, add the sleeves, add the ruffle, the bias facing, and then the ties, and it should be done. So let's go. I have just run into a glitch. So I sewed the shoulder seams and side seams up, first try on to make sure it's going to fit me right, and it doesn't. So around the waist, on the lower side of the bodice, it is actually a little bit tighter than I would like. I wanted it to be a bit more of a boxy, roomier fit, and it only just fits around the waist right now. So I need to pivot, make some adjustments, add in some additional fabric at those side seams to make sure that I've got the room that I planned. So what I'm doing is just adding some extra to my pattern pieces, so then I can angle out that side seam towards the bottom and give myself a little bit of extra room. But also, I have just run out of white thread, like completely run out. So now I've got light purple, that will do. The shops for me are about a half-hour drive away, so it's not exactly convenient to pop out and get some more white thread right now. So purple it is for the rest of the project. So at the side seam, to fix my fit issue, what I've done is cut a long tall triangle and added that in at the side seam and the underarm. So you can see it kind of starts quite small at the top there, at the bottom of the arm side, and then at the down at the hem of the bodice, you can see it does actually get a bit longer. So hopefully that will add in the extra room that I wanted to make it a little bit more boxy. Given that the fabric is highly patterned, it's probably not going to be really visible, which is totally fine by me. Let's see what happens. So this is how it's looking currently with the extra fabric inserted into the side seam. Now I'm moving on to sewing the bias facing for the neckline. I've just understitched the facing, so you can see I've trimmed down the seam allowance and then understitched that neckline to make sure that the facing sits nicely once it's folded over and hopefully doesn't peek out the front. I mean, it doesn't really matter because it's not going to be obvious with this fabric, but with other fabrics it would be a bit more obvious. After understitching that bias facing, I'm then stitching it down on the neckline to ensure it is secure, and the understitching as well as the edge of the fabric are all inside of the facing and not visible. I'll give it a press off camera so that it will finish it off nicely and make it very neat and tidy. I've sewn 2 rows of gathering stitches in the top of my sleeve. This is a balloon sleeve, so it actually has 2 layers on the inside, which were on the previous top. So I'll use these gathering stitches to make the sleeve fit my arm size. Now I am stitching the sleeves to the arm side of the bodice. I've used the gathering stitches to make sure the sleeves are the same size as the arm side and then securing them to the bodice. I then stitch the 6 ties to the front of the bodice at the placket and secure them with a cross or X-shaped stitch to make sure that they don't come loose from the bodice. I did keep the original button plackets, even though the buttonholes will be hidden on the inside, which helped maximise the usable fabric from the shirts. I used 2 rows of gathering stitches on my ruffle peplum and then gathered that fabric down so that it would be the same length as the length of the bottom of my bodice. I've pinned both the bodice and the ruffle peplum together using a whole lot of pins to make sure that my gathers don't move and that they stay nice and even, and then stitch the 2 together. I wanted to make sure that the ruffle peplum would sit nicely and not flip upwards if there was a little bit of a breeze. So I've also sewn a top stitch along that peplum to help it sit down. This is the final version and I'm quite happy with how it turned out. It's been a fun experience thrift flipping some shirts and trying to optimize that fabric to recreate them into something new. Overall, I would definitely attempt this again and I'm inspired to do some more thrift flips.